The activities in the 600 series focus on emergency warnings and response because adequate notification combined with a plan for how to respond can save lives and prevent and/or minimize property damage. The activities emphasize coordinating emergency management functions with the community's other floodplain management efforts, such as providing public information and implementing a regulatory program. Separate parallel activities are included for levees, Activity 620, and dams, Activity 630. Credit points are based on threat recognition, planning for a subsequent emergency response, and ongoing testing and maintenance. Section 600 is flood warning and response, 620 levees, and 630 dams. The purpose of Activity 610, Flood Warning and Response, is to encourage communities to ensure timely identification of impending flood threats, disseminate warnings to appropriate floodplain occupants, and coordinate flood response activities to reduce the threat to life and property. With sufficient warning of a flood, a community and its floodplain occupants can take protective measures such as moving furniture, cars, and people out of harm's way. The National Weather Service issues specific flood warnings for many locations along major rivers and coastlines. Many communities have their own flood threat recognition systems which enable advanced identification of floods on smaller rivers. Flood Threat Recognition System, or FTR credit, is based on the level of service provided by a community's flood threat recognition system. Level 1 is a manual flood threat recognition system. Level 2 is an automated alarm flood threat recognition, and Level 3 is an automated flood threat warning system. Emergency Warning Dissemination, or EWD, credit is provided for emergency warning alerts and messages that are disseminated to the public when a flood is imminent. Flood warning dissemination provides a critical linkage between the recognition of an impending flood and the community's response to the emergency. Flood Response Operations, or FRO, credit is based on the extent of coverage and level of detail that the community's flood warning and response plan provides for the flood response operations. Flood warning and response planning must identify every opportunity to prevent loss of life and property damage during a flood. Critical Facilities Planning, or CFP credit, is provided for coordinating the community's warning and response program with its critical facilities. Storm Ready Community, or SRC credit, is provided to communities that have received a Storm Ready designation from the National Weather Service. Storm Ready is a nationwide community preparedness program that uses a grassroots approach to help communities develop plans to handle all types of severe weather, from tornadoes to tsunamis. Each element has additional criteria specific to that element. The purpose of Series 620 levee activities is to encourage communities to properly inspect and maintain levees and to identify impending levee failures in a timely manner, disseminate warnings to appropriate floodplain occupants, and coordinate emergency response activities to reduce the threat to life and property. The failure or overtopping of a levee poses extreme hazards to buildings, infrastructure, and people on the landward side of the levee. Floodwaters near a levee breach usually move at a much greater velocity than the water within the channel. By doing everything possible to reduce the chance of levee failure, and by being prepared for an event that could lead to levee failure, a community can reduce the potential hazards to life, health, and property. Elements of a levee activity include levee maintenance, where the levee system is maintained and operated according to a written maintenance plan, levee threat recognition system, having a system to advise the emergency manager when there is a threat of the levee's failure or overtopping, levee failure warning, disseminating the warning to the public, levee failure response operations, response actions to be undertaken to reduce or prevent threats to health, safety, and property, and levee failure critical facilities planning, coordination of actions with operators of critical facilities. Each element has additional criteria specific to that element. The purpose of Activity 630 are to encourage states to provide dam safety information to communities and encourage communities in turn to provide timely identification of an impending dam failure, disseminate warnings to those who may be affected, and coordinate emergency response activities to reduce the threat to life and property. For the purposes of this activity, a dam is a structure regulated by the Kentucky Division of Water's Dam Safety Office. This activity focuses less on the dam structure itself than on the impact of a flood that will result from a breach or failure of that structure. Unlike levees, dams do not need flood conditions to fail. They can be breached with little or no warning and send a wall of water downstream. State Dam Safety Program, or SDS credit, is provided for the state's dam safety program to a community that would be affected by the failure of an upstream high-hazard potential dam. Credit is based on the assessment of the condition of the dams in the state, risk communication and public awareness, and promotion of emergency action plans by operators of the dams. Dam Failure Threat Recognition System, or DFR credit, is provided for primary and secondary threat recognition procedures. This credit is separate from flood threat recognition credit in Activity 610, but the Dam Failure Threat Recognition System should be closely coordinated with the Flood Threat Recognition System. Primary Dam Failure Threat Recognition, or DFR1, credit is provided for primary threat recognition procedures in which the operator of the dam notifies local emergency managers of a potential or actual dam breach. This could be based on a predetermined reservoir level, water flowing over the spillway, structural problems discovered in the dam, or other cause for alarm. Secondary Dam Failure Threat Recognition, or DFR2, additional credit is provided for a backup system that includes sensors or cameras on the dam and/or a gauge, camera, or other river-level monitoring system located between the dam and the community. This information must be directly available to the emergency manager. Dam Failure Warning, or DFW credit, is provided for disseminating the warning of a potential dam failure to the public through messages or other notification systems. Once the Dam Failure Flood Threat Recognition System tells local emergency managers what will be flooded and when, warnings should be issued to the affected populations. Dam Failure Response Operations, or DFO credit, is provided for the development of dam failure response operations that identify flood response scenarios, responsibilities, special need populations, and necessary resources. Dam failure response operations need to be spelled out in the Dam Failure Warning and Response Plan. Dam Failure Critical Facilities Planning, or DCF credit, is provided for having information about all critical facilities that could be affected by a dam failure included in the community's dam failure response plan. Additional credit is provided in DCF2 if dam failure warning and response plans for individual critical facilities have been developed, reviewed, and accepted by the community. Series 700 provides the community classification calculations for counties. Flood loss prevention activities have a greater impact in growing areas than in communities with little or no pressure for future development in their floodplain. Therefore, the credit points awarded for activities in the 400 series, Mapping and Regulations, are adjusted to reflect the growth rate of the county in which the community is located. The County Growth Adjustment, CGA, is applied by multiplying the number of points for the activity by the growth rate, see Section 720. Community Rating System, or CRS communities, should be aware that if they have a significant amount of credit for the activities in the 400 series, and if their county has a high growth rate, then the growth rate is providing a significant proportion of their total credit. If the growth rate drops in the future, a community will lose credit points and may lose its CRS class if it cannot make up these points. The County Growth Adjustment used to adjust credit for the 400 series activities is calculated by Insurance Services Office Incorporated, or ISO, for the county in which the community is located. If a community's corporate limits are in 2 or more counties, the growth rates are averaged. Louisville Metro participates in FEMA's CRS program, which rewards communities that implement floodplain management activities. Louisville, as of 2013, is rated at a Class 4, meaning all residents and businesses located in the floodplain receive a 30% discount on flood insurance premiums for structures in the special flood hazard area. Learn more about the Louisville Metro CRS program at their website. As of May 2013, there were 17 communities in Kentucky participating in the community rating system. For more information, please consult the references shown on the slide or contact the Risk Communication Specialist. This concludes our learning module on the community rating system.